Hey guys, SKNOVA here. A lot of people have been asking me about some clan boss strategies and what to look for, what good characters to use, and how do you kind of progress. I wanted to do kind of a all-encompassing clan boss video from easy all the way up to about 17 million damage per key in Nightmare, which is where I'm at right now. And I'll probably talk about what I'm looking for to increase my damage past that point. I struggled a lot in Nightmare actually. I joined the clan that I'm in right now. I had never done Nightmare before. When I started off, I was probably in the 8 to 10 million damage range. I had been doing Brutal, and the strategy between Brutal and Nightmare was very similar. I was fortunate that I had the bad L advantage, and he was sort of, we'll call it broken when I first started, and then they fixed him, or nerfed him, and that reduced my damage a bit, so I had to figure out some new strategies. And I got a few new characters, which kind of changed my strategy as well. And so I'll talk about that in this video. For those of you who are struggling with clan boss at all levels, hopefully this video will help you. Start off, I'll group easy, normal, and hard together in a way because the main point of a clan boss is that you do enough damage to reach the highest chest for that particular boss. If your clan can kill the boss in a day, you get 2 of whatever chest you're at. So ideally you want to do maximum damage and be in a clan that can kill the boss you're at. You can't progress to the higher bosses until you have beaten the lower bosses. I'm not sure what level that starts at. When I joined the first clan, they were already on hard and brutal. They just got into brutal, and then I think you do have to beat brutal, or sorry, hard at least to get to brutal, and brutal to get to Nightmare. Might be wrong, but either way, you're kind of going to be able to join a clan for where you're at, and if you are exceeding the damage, you can maybe look at getting a clan that's doing appropriate damage or clearing the appropriate boss for your damage. You definitely don't want to be in a Nightmare guild, only being able to farm easy. That doesn't help the clan at all either, so choose your clan appropriately. So you can see the chest kind of increase. The top reward of the easy chest is a warrior chest, which is the 3rd chest in the normal. They have a night chest, and so on and so on. So the night chest is the 3rd chest in the hard, and so on and so forth. Right? So you get 1 level of chest per difficulty increase, and every level of clan boss increases. The clan boss has higher resistance, has higher accuracy, so their debuffs land more, and higher speed. And the speed is a really big kicker because the speed is kind of what changes your strategy. So when you're starting out on easy, normally the best strategy is to have abilities that do one of 3 things: poison, HP burn, and or enemy max HP. I wouldn't really build your team or spend a lot of effort trying to get characters that work with easy, because realistically just the level of your characters is going to increase your damage more. Like when you start off on early clan boss, you probably have characters in the 30s, 40s, maybe 50s range. Once you start getting a team of say 50s and 60s, you're going to be progressing past easy anyways. The rewards from easy aren't really great enough to really start to care. It's not until you really get into maybe hard and brutal you start seeing some better rewards like epic tomes and void shards and that kind of thing. And then doing Nightmare, you're going to see sacred shards, legendary tomes. That's really where you want to get to. So Kale was always deemed to be the best early game, and now with the changes to the masteries, with War Master, he might be really good end game too. He puts tons of poisons on because his A1 has poisons and his A3 has poisons. The only thing you need to watch out for with poison is that you don't have so much of it on your clan boss team that you reach the debuff limit, which is 10 or 11 debuffs. Anything past there, and I think you start to replace the lower buffs, so it becomes less useful, right? Because you're starting to override other buffs, and there are a lot of buffs that you want. So Kale is really good. If he wasn't your starting choice, Aethel is the other really good choice for endgame clan boss, but he's not really good until he gets Giant Slayer. So starting out, Kale is probably your number 1 choice for the starting heroes. Gaelic and Elaine just aren't as good on a clan boss. They're good in other areas, just not a clan boss. One other hero that you kind of want to watch out for early on is Wretch. And there aren't that many HP burn heroes out there, but Wretch is one of them. He also has a self-heal, so that makes him kind of good. He's in my rare video as one of the better rares to get for this reason, so watch out for him. And then of course, one of the well-known clan boss, early game clan boss heroes is Coldheart. It's not for her multi-hit ability, that actually doesn't do a ton of damage until you get Giant Slayer, the mastery later on, but really what you're going to be using a lot is Heartseeker. So ideally, if you can skill her up and use tomes on her, she's definitely a good hero to use them on. I'd probably either use them on Kael or Aethel first, because Aethel can be your campaign farmer and Kael will possibly have more purpose in a lot of things. That's not true. Toss up between Kael and Coldheart in terms of which one you want to use your rare tomes on early on in the game. Heartseeker is a fantastic ability. The way you build Coldheart is you want to get her up to about 70% crit, and then as much speed and crit damage as you can possibly get on her. The one worry with her is she is pretty squishy. Some people use the Vamp set, or you need a good healer with her because she dies fairly quickly. Her HP is low, her defense is low, so she's a little bit of a glass cannon, and you won't find her too often in the Nightmare type levels because of that reason. So unless you're dealing with some good, you have a good healer, or you maybe put a Vamp set on her, she becomes really squishy, and she ends up dying really early or earlier on in the clan boss. And there's other sort of damage dealing characters that can outlast her. As well, enemy max HP starts to get outshone a little bit by the damage from Giant Slayer. So in Brutal and Nightmare, other characters sort of catch up in damage to her. But early on, so easy, normal, hard, awesome character to have. So those are three really good rare characters to get. The reason I classified easy, normal, hard together was those are sort of the Giant Slayer or War Master masteries, where those make such a big difference that you start choosing different characters because of that potentially. And some of the most important things early on, the characters you choose are obviously important. What you'll find, the reason why you're not really maximizing damage in easy, normal, hard is you don't have a great healer, or you don't have a good way of preventing damage, and the damage just kind of overtakes you, and you can only last a few rounds, even with lifesteal gear, because the lifesteal damage procs aren't going to be as high. That you don't survive long enough to do a lot of damage. You could do more damage if you could survive. So if you're lucky enough to pull someone like Bad L, who has really great sustain, right? He has a continuous heal, but he's a legendary. Or this is where Vrask kind of comes in and shines too, because if you are able to get the gear for him, right? If you say you had on level 50, you have his 100% crit, and you have a decent amount of HP on him, he can heal for quite a bit. The other one I think is Doom Priest. Doom Priest is basically just a constant heal, 7.5% every single turn. So you build her with as much speed as possible so she gets as many turns, and she removes the debuffs that the clan boss will put on you once he switches affinity. Well, that's really good. I mean, there's a few other healers too that kind of help out. Thanasil is another one because he has increased defense. Just keep that in mind, that if you want to get ahead, easy, normal, look at how many rounds you're lasting. If you can't get past, say, round 10, you haven't really hit the first big enrage buff, you're probably just dying to sustain. So those kind of things will help you earlier on. If you do get a Steel Skull early, he's great at all levels, because he does have poison, he has an increased defense, he has a lot of heals. He would be probably one of the top tier healers throughout all levels. And some people some people here, if you read guides and things, you'll see that Apothecary is ranked really high. And he is good because of his speed buff, more so than a healer. So if you're looking for a healer, he's not going to be able to keep your entire team up. He also is going to be very damage limited until he gets Giant Slayer. Like, you don't really build him for damage. Most people build him with all 6 pieces of speed, as much speed as possible, so he can speed up the rest of the team as much as possible. So he's not for damage, but he'll do a decent amount of damage with Giant Slayer just because he has a 3-hit turn. Like I was mentioning, Thanasil has the increased defense, which is also very good for sustain. Also heals by 25% of this character's HP, so that's decent. And his damage, again, is not going to be fantastic, but heal is pretty decent. So there's some good ideas of how you kind of get past normal and hard. Like I said, focus on leveling your characters first. Once you start getting into hard and then brutal, that's where your clan boss strategy starts to change a little bit. And what really defines the clan boss character, the clan boss team, is the characters you have, and then the gear. And the gear begins to become so much more important. Obviously, if you're doing easy, normal, hard, having max level gear helps a lot. The toxic set helps a ton. I think I have the toxic set on my steel skull still. I find it procs a lot less now, but so I'll probably just switch to a speed set. But the toxic set, which gives you a chance to put a little poison on. You have to be careful on teams where you have multiple poisoners or maybe multiple toxic sets, because you will start to hit the debuff limit, especially early on. One of the gear considerations that you see in brutal and normal is you start to get a lot more speed gear. You can start using lifesteal a lot more, because once you have the War Master or Giant Slayer masteries, their procs count towards your lifesteal. That's why everyone starts to wear lifesteal gear. But you start seeing people use a lot more defense and HP percent gear than, say, attack or crit damage gear, because you really need to keep your healers and everything alive as long as possible. And you know, an extra round or two in clan boss damage, especially with Giant Slayer and War Master, procs a lot more than into increasing your damage by or your attack by 50% or your crit. Right, that little extra damage you do from those doesn't outweigh the extra turn or 3 or 4 turns you can get from keeping your sustain, keeping alive longer. So you begin to change and build that way. So like my Juliana is one character I use in the clan boss. She does have attack and crit just to keep her turn meter as high as possible, but she's also using the vamp set. And she has a decent amount of HP, and maybe she could use a little more defense, but you can see speed is a big factor. So by the time you get to Nightmare clan boss, one of the things that I was actually struggling with is my speed was too low. So if your speed is below the 170 mark, you begin to struggle a lot on clan boss, where he will get turns ahead of you, and some of your characters may not even attack. You might lose on the first turn. It just kind of throws your whole rotation off. And so when you start doing Nightmare especially, you need the speed. That becomes a limiting factor. The other thing that switches in Brutal and Nightmare is counterattack becomes such a big part of your rotation. So early, easy, normal, hard, you can actually outspeed the counterattack ability a lot of times. It becomes very hard to time counterattack so that your characters get 2 rounds of counterattack. In fact, up to hard you probably won't get it. Even on brutal it gets a little bit challenging. By the time you get to Nightmare, the boss becomes so fast, he's probably in the 160 to 170 speed range, and you only really get 1 attack per boss attack in. Prior to that in easy, I mean, you have rounds where you might get 2 or 3 attacks per boss attack, because the boss is that much slower. So if you use a counterattack, you pop your counterattack up even near the end. Most of your characters might attack once, even twice, which basically negates the whole purpose of counterattack. Not as useful. But near the end, in Brutal and Nightmare, counterattack becomes almost crucial. Having those extra attack in from your top damage dealers, plus the characters that have buffs or debuffs on their A1s, makes counterattack insanely powerful. Past Nightmare, there's a point where you can actually sort of outspeed the counterattack ability. Where having enough speed on all of your characters, it's better to use like a speed aura and speed boost like Apothecary or Seeker, and that actually gives you more attacks than the counterattack from Skullcrusher or Martyr might even. So there's only 3 counterattack characters in the game: Martyr, Skullcrusher, and Valkyrie, that provide an AoE counterattack to everybody. Martyr and Skullcrusher are only really 2 usable ones, mostly because their counterattack is on a 3-turn cooldown. I think Valkyrie's is a 5-turn cooldown. Let me just check that here. So yes. So one, she needs 6 tombs to get to there, but her counterattack ability will be 5 turns after you tomb her up, and that's potentially 10 skill tombs to get there. I mean, if she's your only counterattack hero, you kind of got to do it. And then Martyr's probably the best counterattack hero. Again, one skill tomb, and you can essentially get her to 3 turns. And plus her A1 also has a decreased defense. So Martyr's your number one choice. You definitely build a counterattack team around her. She's very useful. The best counterattack character. Skullcrusher's probably second. Valkyrie is good, but because you're only going to get the counterattack every third turn, it might be better to look at more of a speed team at that point. And by speed team, the characters that you often see on the speed team are either Seeker or Gorgrab or Apothecary. And the Seekers, you get it down to a 3-turn ability, which is pretty awesome. So basically, it only takes a couple turns to get his turn meter buff back up. He doesn't have the speed buff that Apothecary does, but you may or may not also want that. 2 characters with turn meter, I don't know if that's excellent or bad, or you have to be careful, because as you start buffing people's turn meter, you do start to overcap, where they're already full and your turn meter gets wasted. So I don't see many teams running double speed boosters, but it might be possible. Gorgrab is also valuable because he has a 15%, but it's not as good as Seeker and or Apothecary. So the one you see most of the time is definitely Apothecary for the speed boost. So he doesn't have the increased attack, but your attack damage becomes less important once you get Giant Slayer and or War Master, and the speed boost and the turn meter boost become more valuable. The turn meter reduction and speed reduction don't work on the clan boss, so you don't need characters that do that, but you need characters that buff yourself. So that's kind of where the transition happens. Oh, happy Mother's Day. So I'll show you some of the clan boss teams that are currently out there. Now, a lot of people in the guild have been doing this pre-War Master. So War Master changed things a little bit. Now your 2-hit characters will probably take War Master over Giant Slayer, because a lot of your 2-hit characters probably also have an A2 or A3 that's a 1-hit, and War Master would be better with those. Any characters with a 3 or 4, especially say Aethel and Apothecary, where you're really only using for attacking their A1, you can use Giant Slayer. It works out a lot better. So most of the characters, Tyrell, Apothecary, you see a few Julianas, Skullcrushers and Martyrs for counterattack. Those are kind of all staples. Steel Skull. One character that I like to talk about that is super valuable and maybe even a little bit underrated, because based off the the class guides or the best of lists that I've seen, is this guy here, Warlord. So he was underrated because most people go by the guides and they say, okay, well, he only has a 1-hit A1. So that makes him less valuable than, say, the 3-hit A1 characters out there, like a Nethril or a Zavia. But what you don't realize is this increasing the duration of your debuffs means that your defense down, your weaken, your poisons, your HP burn, your decreased attack, all those buffs, you can potentially keep them up, not quite permanently, but you're more likely to keep them up for a long period of time. So by doing that, you have to apply them less. Even a Nightmare especially, you're going to have turns, unless you have an A1 really good defense down character, there's going to be rounds where you don't have defense down, or possibly weaken if you don't have Aethel. And definitely your poisons are going to be dropping off. You're not going to be able to sustain them up all the time. So all of a sudden you bring out Warlord, and that extra buff, when it catches, you can essentially keep them perpetually up. And I'm going to show you a picture here. Some of you may have seen this before. It was on Discord. This is a guy in our guild. So look at his Steel Skull, 16 million damage. And what most people look at this and say is, well, how do you gear Steel Skull to do that much damage as a support? Masteries like Steel Skull. It's the Warlord increasing Steel Skull's poison debuffs that's making the big difference here. Well, let me zoom back in. Right? And the fact that he has Tyrell, so he has attack down, so he can also keep attack down on the boss, lets you live a little bit longer, lets you do more damage from everything. And I know that his Steel Skull is just built all speed, and if you're speedy enough, you can get your speed high enough, essentially you can keep the defense down debuff on longer, And as well, Warlord has a shield ability and a heal. So he really has 3 healers in here. Warlord being sort of in a support role, but buffing everyone else's damage because stuff they're able to survive longer and do more damage. And Steel Skull's poison, so it really puts them over the edge. So Tyrell is built a little bit more offensively because you do have, the buff up for all the main damaging abilities. You have enough healers to kind of sustain you and cover you. Allows everyone to do way more damage. So I'll show you the second ability here, which is also important. Block debuffs can be huge for the affinity clan boss when he switches below 50%. He'll put, a decreased speed or a decreased attack or a poison debuff on you, and this will prevent that. Plus the shield, plus the heal, huge sustain. Sustain becomes equally important to damage because really your damage comes from just hitting with Giant Slayer and War Master procs more so than your personal damage. And it's good to have personal damage too, like attack and crit and all that kind of stuff, but the longer you can live, the better. So it's really if you're able to go, past the round 20 and get into 23, 25, 30 rounds on the clan boss, that's where you really start to survive. So Warlord, being a void legendary, extremely hard to get, but definitely underrated. Game breaker, and this guy will probably push you further into Nightmare. So you want to know, I don't know anyone who can single key Nightmare. I don't think that's quite possible yet, but to 2 key Nightmare, that is one of the secret weapons right there. We'll put it that way. If you have him early on, he doesn't feel powerful. You just have to figure out how to pair him right. Like I said, the abilities that really are required, there's a few characters that provide it. One of them is the decreased attack. So, he has a 50% chance of putting it on, but it's a 2-turn ability, so hopefully every second turn you land a decreased attack. Decreased attack makes a huge difference on the clan boss, and pretty much once this drops off near the end game is when he starts to one-shot you. Might give you an extra 5 to 10 rounds if you can keep it up every single round. That's huge. Tyrell also brings the decreased defense debuff. The sleep debuff obviously doesn't work on the clan boss, and you never use the preemptive strike. Like once you get War Master on Tyrell, basically he's going to be using A1 and A2 constantly. So Tyrell is a staple. There's a few other characters that have abilities that are similar. Some of the new legendaries and stuff do as well, but Tyrell is a almost must-have. He's very similar to Royal Guard. Like if you look at Royal Guard's ability, he also have a turn meter decrease with a decreased speed. He has an enemy max HP ability for everybody, and he has a decreased defense debuff, a little bit different than decreased attack. But the only reason people weren't using him was because of his A1 ability was only a single hit, but now with War Master, potentially very useful again. I don't know if that replaces Tyrell, because they kind of do a similar thing. And you really are kind of limited in what all the characters you can bring, the combination that works for you. So his A2 doesn't actually do anything because you can't decrease the speed or the turn meter. So that's why he's a little bit less than Tyrell, but this is still a really good debuff to have. So if you have a Royal Guard and no Tyrell, might be an option, but you're still going to be looking for that decreased attack from somebody. I haven't made my list of all the decreased attack debuffers out there, but that's something to watch out for. For weekend, Aethel is probably the #1 choice. You've probably seen videos of him, so I won't go too much into detail, but Zargala is also used. The problem with Zargala is it's only a 1-turn debuff, but she also brings the decreased defense debuff. So that's, a potential option. Some of the better choices out there, if you can get them, like Razin. Hard to plan around legendaries, but if you do get them, this will change your team a little bit. So he has the ability to remove a buff. He has a 3-hit. That made him really good with Giant Slayer. The ability to remove a buff, so the clan boss does buff himself below 50%, gives himself a 25% attack buff. If you can remove that, all the better. But his A2, which is on a 3-turn cooldown, potentially places defense and weaken. So you get both of them in one shot here. So it doesn't quite perfectly replace Aethel, but with the patch 1.7 changes to weaken and decrease defense, no longer affecting poisons and HP burns. If you had a lot of damage from poison and HP burn, those won't matter as much. But the weaken and decrease defense do still affect War Master and Giant Slayer, which is still a large portion of your damage, so you still definitely want to keep the debuffs up. It's just that now you have kind of another option for getting them. So you can potentially drop Aethel, put Razin, and maybe another person with weaken, if you have the right combination, and that makes it even better. So what I'm finding on my team right now is I will show you. So obviously some easy, the easiest way to improve my team would have been to get a Warlord, and that would change the team greatly. But I use Aethel, Tyrell, Steel Skull, Skull Crusher, and Juliana. And with the changes to resistance on the boss, actually the scaling and actually working, I now have enough accuracy on Juliana and Tyrell and Steel Skull that their abilities tend to land fairly often. Like in the average fight, I only might miss 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 if I'm unlucky HP burns out of 7 or 8 of them that I normally go per fight. So it's much better odds, and before it was probably like a 50-50 whether it would hit or not. Same thing with Steel Skull and his poison abilities. I mean, it's lower chance of proccing, but now with the changes, it seems to make a difference, and accuracy matters. And so for gearing on the characters, I'll show you my Juliana because she's my main damage dealer, and how I geared her. She's typically doing around between 5 and 7, so probably averages about 6 million damage per clan boss. I think I could improve a lot of the gear a little bit, and like I showed, she has crit rate gloves and attack chest. What I was really going for was pizza with speed on it, and I farmed a lot of Dragon's Lair because everyone needs vamp and speed gear. Just looking for mostly speed. I try and look for HP percent and defensive stats as well where possible, so they can definitely be improved. But the key that made a difference is I had an HP banner on her when the accuracy was broken, and she had an extra 5,000. I think she had this one, right? So a lot more HP and about the same speed. And she was a little bit more tanky, and she would last maybe a round or 2 longer than she does now because she wouldn't be one shot as soon. But now with the extra accuracy, that extra 78 accuracy, puts her at 205 accuracy. That's what makes her no longer miss. I'm guessing, this is just my personal opinion, like if your accuracy is above 170, that's where it starts to improve. Below that, you tend to miss a little bit more. So somewhere in the 160, 170 range seems to be the break-even point, and after that, you miss less and less and less. Obviously, diminishing returns, but 200 accuracy isn't impossible. You're going to need to probably have some Town Hall buffs or accuracy buffs on your gear, but really you're not going for accuracy rolls, you really want speed rolls. So I can definitely improve her a little bit. Oh yeah, the other problem is I didn't want her speed to increase too much past, because I'm still using a counterattack team. So if her speed starts to get a lot further, or a lot higher than the Skull Crusher that I have, I run the problem of her using up, especially with her skill of turn meter boost, her running out of counterattack before the counterattack turn. So I actually had to choose some items that didn't have as much speed on them to balance out. I wish I could increase speed throughout my entire team, so I'm still farming more speed gear. I'm just being careful as to what pieces I have speed on. All of them have speed boots. Her speed boots can easily be improved. Just has high accuracy. That's the only reason I chose that one there. And the only reason I have this crappy neck is for the accuracy. So I think I farmed a little bit of spider. I can probably find a better neck at some point. Maybe not. No accuracy neck, that's better. A lot of banners though. But yeah, lots of choices. So yeah, so 190 speed on her. What does Tyrell have? He has 200 speed. Steel Skull has 202 speed. My Skull Crusher is the lowest of them, 187. So they're all kind of in that ballpark, I guess we'll say. And Aethel is 191. So I guess they're all in kind of like the 190 to 200 range. And if I can bump them all a little bit higher, which I think is definitely possible, think a lot of them are still missing one or two pieces that could definitely have higher speed rolls and stuff. And if I can get to that point, yeah, as opposed to I can get speed on the gloves with, I don't think Aethel needs as much accuracy, but that would be the biggest difference. So you get the same kind of piece, take off a little bit of attack damage, and if you put like 14 speed on it, all the characters, once you're getting over 200 speed, then you can start looking at getting a more of a speed team than a counterattack team. That's sort of an interesting turning point in the game. That's something that I'm working towards. So I'm farming a ton of Dragon's Lair. You can see I have tons of speed pieces. I'm a little bit of an item hoarder, I guess, but I'm just looking for pieces that have more speed on them. And you don't find a lot of them. Like finding speed pieces with speed stats on them and then having them roll a decent amount of speed is actually pretty challenging. So most of the good speed pieces I have already used up, and you have to level them up to 12 to get speed. Tons and tons and tons of speed gear. Getting speed boots with speed on it, also a challenge. And I could probably toss a lot of these because I don't need them. Yeah, so these are just ones I keep. I mean, I get chests with resistance on them, or accuracy, or gloves with flat stats, you know, gloves, chests, and boots with flat stats. Those I just sell right away. These are kind of the slightly better versions of them, but I probably can do 50 runs and only get maybe one item upgrade for anybody. So it's a slow process, working it in progress. There's one with a little bit of speed, but after 12 rolls, not enough. So that's where you spend the majority of your time to get from Nightmare, you know, farming 10 million damage per key to 12 to 16 to 20. If you can't get the characters you need, I think I have the right characters that can do it. It comes down to items, and just tweaking those items just right to get more speed helps out a ton. At this point, my sustain is actually pretty good in my lifesteal. So the other option I'm looking at is putting more damage on some of my characters. So especially Steel Skull is the next one to switch out. Toxic isn't really working out too well, so going more speed. That'll presently increase the damage a little bit more. I don't really put I didn't put any accuracy on the gear. I chose gear with other stats. Getting his accuracy up might help with his poison landing a little bit more often. That's why his toxic isn't working too well. I think is just not enough accuracy. I could definitely upgrade this. I just put this on earlier. So all those little tweaks, and it becomes very expensive. I probably spent the last artifact event, which is 3 weeks ago or so, is where I basically redid all the gear of my characters. Tayral, Juliana, Apothecary, they all had totally different sets. So I found gear, some of it I had, some of it I had to farm, leveled a lot of it up. A lot of it's still a work in progress. Leveling up every piece to 16 is somewhere between 1.5 and 3 million silver for each one. I mean, some of it didn't start off quite at 0 or 1, but it was a lot of work to farm it up, find it, and still a work in progress. I have a few really good pieces, but most of it I think is slightly above average in terms of what I could get. I could definitely find a lot more speed, and once I get a lot more speed, my plan is to actually swap out Skull Crusher for Apothecary. So he's also a work in progress, building up his speed. He's at 199. My choices are either, I probably would leave the Vamp set on him, but I probably find more speed. So once I get all my characters up to the 200 to 210 range, I think I might try more of a attack speed with Vamp set approach, and then swap out Skull Crusher for some other characters. It'll be an interesting experiment, but that's what I'm working on. And the goal is to get to the 20 million damage per Nightmare key, which puts you at the ability to get the ultimate chest in just 2 keys. So if you can do the 19.6 damage per key, you're at the 2 key ultimate range, and you can probably also do the brutal key in 1 key at that point and get 2 Grandmaster chests and 2 ultimate chests per day with 3 keys is pretty awesome. And if you really want to, you can also get a hard Guardian chest. So 6 chests per day now that we have the 2 key maximum is pretty awesome. The only hard part about that would probably be the guild is killing things a little bit too quickly, so you wouldn't even have time to get them all. That's not a bad problem to have. I'm happy just getting the ultimate chests per day. It really gives you a ton of brews, which make leveling characters go really easy. Almost too fast. If you look at, I use them constantly to level up the 1-star heroes to 2-star heroes. I use a brew in 3 other 1-stars. So I'll probably go through every leveling session, 30, 40 of each brew, and it still just keeps refilling more and more than I could ever use. I was down to 0 sort of when I started a couple weeks ago, and I have enough champions, I think, in the vault now to level up 2 more 50s to 60. I have a bunch of 5-star food champions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8 there, and 1 in here, 9. And 1 almost in progress. So yeah, more than enough food, lots of characters. I love that they opened up the champion vault. I can probably buy a few more slots even. Keep all my void characters, trying to keep 1 of all the rares. I have a bunch of characters that I have multiple skill ups in. So as I was getting extra versions of characters, I was putting all of the extras in here. So anything with a level 10 or 30 probably has 2 or 3 other characters at least. Skill them up so they have a bunch of skill points, and makes farming fun. I don't know if any of these characters will ever become useful, because as you get collecting all the rares, you start getting more and more epic characters that are really good, like Bonekeeper, Aethar, Frostbringer could all be used in the clan boss and various things. Durang is one we've talked about a little bit. I would like to level him up and maybe try him out in the Minotaur to see how his damage performs. I think he has some potential. A lot of people are saying yes or no, or some controversy around him. But until someone tries him and levels up his masteries, we don't really know for sure. Just as a quick skill view here, why I think Drang might be good. Oops. We'll see this. So he has a built-in 30% decreased defense. So you build him, as a damage character. These other ones, and he also has the attack buff and decreased defense buff. So he's kind of like a support to Tyrell, right? He provides some of the similar abilities to Tyrell does. The only difference is it's on a 4-turn cooldown, so I don't know how useful that would be. But his damage might be high because of the 30% ignore. So it's not quite a full 30% extra damage, but it is a significant buff. Or maybe he could be useful in something like PvP or something that else too, where decreasing defense becomes more popular. I don't think he's as good as some of the epics that are out there. Like, he probably wouldn't replace my Royal Huntsman, who has 100% ignore defense on his A3 and one-shots pretty much everybody when it crits. But could be an interesting option. And I might just do it just as an experiment to see how it works out, to advise people on how it works. So there you go. My arena team is in good shape. This isn't clan boss related, but I have a Lysandra and I have a Seeker. And a lot of people would rank Lysandra as a better buffer. I mean, I put artifacts on her, not fully skilled up. Her speed's not as high as it could be. She's at 248, and my Seeker is at 264. So they're close, right? Like, I mean, they require different banners, which is maybe some of the difference there. Like, her banner's 8. But the problem with Lysandra's skill buff, for my team anyways, is she doesn't have the increased attack damage. And in Arena, that actually makes a significant difference. In that, rather than, say, one-shotting or taking up the majority of people's health, you only do half the damage. So it's nice that it decreases the turn meter of everybody, but the way my Arena team works, I really only need to reduce the turn meter of their main single buffer, and I already have a Begun to reduce turn meter of everybody else afterwards. So as long as he can go before the rest of the team, like if their turn buffer is disabled, and Big Gun goes, and his turn meter decreases everybody's, or his ability decreases their turn meter, I'm usually okay. So Lysandra won't make that big of a difference there. Her A2 is super handy for taking out certain characters like a Skull Crusher or a Martyr or some counterattack character that you want to stop from going. But the losing out of the initial attack where you just eliminate the threats entirely right off the bat seems to be better. So for now, I'm still sticking with Seeker. Any speed gear I get that's better than what he already has on him. I'm looking for epic gear with 3 rolls, and as you can see, I have very few. Right, so these are, it's a 4-star 3 roll, so it could be improved there. I have speed boots, but everything else is still a 2-star or a 2 roll, or 1 roll even. That's probably a 1 roll. It's a 1 roll. That's a 2 roll. 2 roll meaning like he has 2 upgrades into speed. Whereas if he had 3, I would add so much more. And I think going forward, the everyone will eventually have, you know, the new high elf arena hero, the Arbiter. And the only thing that's going to distinguish people is how much speed you put on her, right? Because you want her to go first, use a speed hero. So keep farming all the speed gear you can get. Look for those 3 rolls. The first person to get to 300 speed or whatever is going to be, you know, the top Arbiter. I actually fought an Arbiter in arena today. With the way the arena is skilled up right now, unfortunately she wasn't very geared. Didn't really see her do much. But she is going to change arena entirely. Not totally get rid of Lord Shazar and Prince Kaimar. They both have abilities outside of their aura which were useful. But for the speed aura, I mean, everyone is going to get a baseline speed aura. I would have preferred that they just gave more characters the ability rather than giving a character that everybody can get the ability. So basically it pays for people that are further progressed in the game. It puts them in further ahead of people that aren't. But that hopefully is only temporary. That's an aside. Clan boss video, hopefully that helps. To summarize things, early on get poison HP burn, enemy max HP. Look for characters that do that. If you need a list, I can probably provide one. There's a bunch of characters I didn't talk about, like Husk, you know, that could potentially fill those roles as well. But again, maybe get them to 50, so you can do up to a sort of hard and maybe the beginning of brutal with them. But your brutal clan boss strategy is going to change significantly where these guys aren't as valuable. So rather than spending a lot of time, you know, leveling these guys to 60, spend your time in the Minotaur Lair, which has since been nerfed a little bit. Get Giant Slayer on the important heroes, easy ones to get. Get it on your Apothecary, your Aethel, Cold Heart if you have her, you know, Tayrell, Steel Skull, some of the epics that you might have. That'll make a bigger difference in your clan boss team. Level those guys up to 60, and with Giant Slayer, that's where you'll be into brutal. And then Nightmare, you really have to have a very specific team, and looking for very specific heroes, looking for counterattack. Start working on all your gear, farm as much speed gear as you can. You're going to spend a ton of time in the Dragon's Lair, and that is how you clan boss. Hopefully that's enough information for you guys. Any more questions? Write in the comments below. Hope you liked that one, and we will see you in the next video.